Good evening, Rocky Mount. Please give it up for our Imperial Center actors and actresses. Welcome to this special evening as we celebrate our community and our history. I am your MC for the evening. My name is Tamika Keenan Norman. Did we not just go to church right there? Yes, we did. Can somebody say amen? Yes, we have a very special evening planned for you. First and foremost, on behalf of the city of Rocky Mount, I welcome you to the Imperial Center for the Arts and Sciences. Are you ready to have a good time by round of applause? Yes. All right. Well, we have got some special things in store. We're going to have some more performances just like that. We're going to have some skits which highlight the time in history when Dr. King was right here in Rocky Mount in 1962. Dr. Jason Miller will be our keynote speaker. His documentary, Origin of the Dream, traces the origins of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic I Have a Dream speech. We have government officials who are going to speak with you this evening, so sit back, have a wonderful evening. Please, if you haven't, silence your cell phones for me, okay? Is that all right? All right. Right now, we welcome to the stage City Council member Chris Miller.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks to each of you for being here tonight. It's my honor to be with you and to introduce our distinguished guest. First of all, North Carolina Representative Bobby Richardson. Bobby, former Rocky Mount Councilwoman Helen Gay. I understand that Councilmember Reuben Blackwell, in whose ward we are tonight, was unable to be here, and he sends his regrets. Rocky Mount Councilman and NAACP President Andre Knight. Rocky Mount Councilwoman Lois Watkins. City Manager Charles Penny. And Nash County Manager Z. Lamb. And if there are others who should have been introduced, I apologize that their names did not get to us. Again, thanks to each of you for sharing this exciting evening. Tonight's program celebrates our rich history, particularly in relation to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1962 visit to Rocky Mount. It was during that visit that Dr. King first gave his I Have a Dream speech. It was in the Booker T. Washington High School gymnasium. Many of our community members remember that occasion. In fact, there are people with us tonight who were fortunate to attend. Tonight, we celebrate that memory. The Origin of the Dream is a research project, a documentary, and a publication by Dr. Jason Miller of NC State. In his book, Dr. Miller links the prose of Langston Hughes, his use of the dream, and how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. expounded upon that imagery in his speeches. Due to our powerful history with Dr. King, we are fortunate to have this project come to Rocky Mount. The full-length documentary will not be completed until 2017. In the meantime, we're excited to have a short feature to view in the meantime. This short film features members of our community as they share their memories of Dr. King's historic visit. Again, welcome and thank you for being with us.
And we are going to see that short feature a little closer to the end of the program. Right now, I do want to welcome our community members back to the stage as they reenact poetry from Langston Hughes and the letters that brought Dr. King to Rocky Mount.
I dream a world where man, no other man was born, where love will bless the earth and peace his path adorn. I dream a world where all know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day.
A world I dream, where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free. For wretchedness will hang his head, and joy, like a pearl, will attend the needs of all mankind. It's such I dream, my world.
Such a world, Langston Hughes dreamed, and so did Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And with the urging of his friend, the Reverend George W. Dudley, Dr. King brought that dream to Rocky Mount, North Carolina in November of 1962. And it started with a letter.
March 1st, 1938. Dear Mike, I sincerely hope all things go well with you, Coretta, and the babies. I am moving along here very well, only a bit lonesome without my family. I tried to reach you via telephone on Friday, February 21st, but your secretary informed me that you were away. So, I am taking this method of trying to reach you. I am trying along with several other ministers and leaders to get some new life into our local chapter of the NAACP and get into our people a sense of citizenship. To this end, we are hoping to have a mass meeting on either the 19th, the 20th, or the 21st of March. It will be called a Citizenship Mass Meeting. We are anxious to have you as our speaker on either of these dates most convenient to you. Try to make it for us. We will adequately care for your expenses and provide an appreciationable honorarium. You have the message the community needs and will listen to. As soon as you have received this letter, call me collect at the church where I live, or where I live. If you can be with us on one of these dates, you can easily fly to Raleigh, where I will meet you and take you back to make a flight to any other point. I hope you can find it convenient to be with us on one of these dates. I could appreciate greatly the fellowship. Give my love to Coretta and the children. Please let me hear something at once. Sincerely, your friend. Doug.
Doug and Michael Close. The Reverend Dudley knew that King's message would be of importance to the people of Rocky Mount. Their correspondence continued. In July of 1958, Doug wrote again to Mike, urging for him to bring his inspiration to Eastern North Carolina.
July 10, 1958. Dear Mike, I deeply regret that I was unable to meet you in Atlanta on Wednesday, July 9th, as planned. But pressing pastoral duties prevented my leaving Rocky Mount. I am greatly appreciative of the opportunity to talk with you concerning the possibility of you coming to be our annual Men's Day preacher on Sunday, September 28th. It is very kind of you to consider a possible rearrangement of another engagement to be with us. I sincerely hope and pray that this can be done. Having your fellowship would be great for me. The people of Eastern North Carolina need to see and hear you. Mount Zion needs your inspiration and presence. Being here would put you very close to Norfolk for the conference, to which I would be extremely happy to follow you. I shall be very happy to hear from you early next week so we could begin work toward at least making the occasion somewhat commensurate with the speaker. Please convey my love and best wishes to Coretta and the children. My good wishes to you, sincerely, Doug.
Well, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It had cracks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor. There. But all the time,
Eyes have been carrying and reaching landings and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back now. Don't you step down on those steps because you find life is kind of hard. Because eyes are still going, honey. Eyes are still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair.
The Reverend Dudley kept climbing. So much so, we know that his efforts to bring Dr. King to Rocky Mountain, and he brought it. In September of 1961, Dr. King wrote a letter to Mr. and Mrs. Willie Tolles of Philadelphia.
September 14th, 1961. Dear Willie and Ernestine, this is just a note to acknowledge receipt of your very kind letter of recent dates. It is always good to hear from you. I'm happy to know that you had a safe trip back to Philadelphia. I must apologize for the faux pas that I made concerning the Rocky Mount, North Carolina contact. I did not have a chance to call Reverend Dudley back that Sunday afternoon. I called him again Monday and got no answer. I then proceeded to call 2 other times, and the result was the same, no answer. From this, I assumed that they had left town for a vacation. My belief was substantiated when I saw Reverend Dudley after that, and he told me that they left late Sunday for Arkansas. I regretted so much that I did not know anyone else in Rocky Mount to call, and I did not know how to contact you in Florida to let you know what had happened. I do hope you found accommodations all right. I will be coming to Philadelphia sometime in October, and I will be sure to contact you when I'm there. Sincerely yours, Martin Luther King, Jr.
All of this letter writing and perseverance eventually paid off. Wednesday, November 14th, 1962, the Evening Telegram announces Dr. Martin Luther King to speak here, November 27th.
Dr. Martin Luther King, President of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, will be principal speaker at a meeting of the Rocky Mount Voters and Improvement League on Tuesday night, November 27th. It was announced today by the Reverend George W. Dudley, President of the local organization. The meeting will be held in the Booker T. Washington Senior High School Gymnasium beginning at 8 o'clock. Dr. King is a native of Atlanta, Georgia, and in addition to heading the Southern Leadership Conference, he is co-pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Since 1957, the Negro leader has been active in the field of human rights. It was during that year that the Gallup poll revealed that Dr. King was one of the most admired religious leaders in the world. Time magazine also selected him as one of the 10 outstanding personalities of the year. Link magazine of Delhi, India, in a poll conducted by that publication, ranked him among 16 world leaders who had contributed most to the advancement of freedom during 1959.
During intervals in his speaking engagements throughout the nation and foreign countries, Dr. King has written a number of books, including Stride Toward Freedom, which won the Ainsfield Wolf Award as the best book on race relations in 1958. The Negro leader has traveled extensively in Europe, Asia, South America, and Africa, and has lectured in more than 100 colleges and universities in the United States. Dr. King is the recipient of 39 awards and citations from religious and civic organizations throughout the nation, in addition to many honorary degrees bestowed upon him by colleges and universities.
The Rocky Mount Voters and Improvement League was organized here several years ago. It has endeavored to bring outstanding leaders of both races to speak at their regular meetings. Dr. King's appearance here is part of that program in order that citizens in this area can hear the world leader. The Booker T. Washington High School Gymnasium is being set up to accommodate approximately 1,500 people. In announcing the appearance here of Dr. King, Reverend Dudley also announced a meeting of the Voters and Improvement League Friday night. This meeting will be held at the St. John AME Zion Church on the corner of Atlantic Avenue and Goldie Street, and will begin at 8 o'clock.
Dr. King was bringing his dream to Rocky Mount, North Carolina. On Tuesday afternoon, November the 27th, 1962, the Evening Telegram says, Dr. King speaks in city tonight.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, will be the principal speaker at a meeting of the Rocky Mount Voters and Improvement League tonight at the Booker T. Washington Senior High School Gymnasium. The program is scheduled for 8 p.m.
The appearance of Dr. King will be the first of this section of the state since he came into the spotlight several years ago in the field of human rights. Dr. W.T. Armstrong, Vice President of the local organization, will preside in tonight's session, and the Reverend George W. Dudley, Lead President, will introduce Dr. King. Also on the program will be Mayor W.B. Harrison, who will officially welcome the visitor to Rocky Mount. A choir of more than 100 voices, directed by William T. Grimes, will furnish the music.
Joshua did the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua did the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Joshua did the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua did the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. You can talk about the name of Gideon. You can talk about the name of Saul. Ain't none like good old Joshua at the battle of Jericho. Joshua did the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua did the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Joshua did the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua did the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down.
All right. Once again, our Imperial Center actors and actresses doing such a phenomenal job. I also want to recognize Brooke Edwards, who's our Imperial Center theater manager. She's only been in the community for 3 months, and she's directing those folks too. So please give her a round of applause as well. She's doing a phenomenal job too. I want to let you know that at the end of the show this evening, you're welcome to come to our art center because we have a new exhibit, Color in Freedom, Journey Along the Underground Railroad. And alongside that exhibit is the Origin of the Dream documentary. And speaking of that, I want to welcome to the stage right now, I know he's in the audience, Dr. Jason Miller, a man who is so passionate about this community that he brought his work to the Imperial Center to make it a permanent in our community. So Dr. Miller, please come to the stage. And following his presentation, you're going to see a portion of that Origin of the Dream documentary. Welcome, Dr. Miller.
Thank you so much. This is such a humbling honor to be a part of a fantastic program and to be a part of your community. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming me and our director of the film, Rebecca Cerise. It's been a terrific delight. I had the great opportunity to drive up to Rocky Mount this evening, but when Dr. King came in November 27th of 1962, he flew. And his opening comments as he talked about his flight, as he traveled from Atlanta to Raleigh, is he told Dr. Armstrong that it was a particularly bumpy flight. And it was so bumpy that he was a little worried. I mean, he got scared. And once he said that, he said, "Now, I want to assure you, though, it's not that I don't have faith in God in the air, it's just I have more experience with him on the ground." It is really such an honor to be here. I just want to share a brief overview of the projects we're working on to tell your story. It's a story you have known so long. It's a story that so many people have contributed to, and it's just an honor for me to listen, learn, and try to spread the word. So, I'd like to begin by showing and telling a little bit about the connection you've been hearing about so dramatically between Langston Hughes and Dr. King. So if we could look at the first slide, I want to highlight one thing. In 1960, Dr. King was thinking about organizing an event to celebrate the life of A. Philip Randolph, who was turning 70 years old. And so he planned an event in Carnegie Hall. And when he thought in 1960, one person he thought of was Langston Hughes. Born in 1902, Langston Hughes is best known as the leading figure of the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s and 30s. But Langston Hughes lived until May of 1967. And as such, his life overlapped with Dr. King. In fact, Langston Hughes passed 11 months before Dr. King's assassination. So unknown to most of the world is the fact that the two exchanged letters, met in person, and how often Dr. King used all the poems you've been hearing tonight. Every single one of them, many of them from memory. So this letter, I know it's hard to see in the back, but it's a letter that in the second paragraph, and if we could click to the next slide, that would be great, just advance it, says, "It would be an honor to have our foremost poet write about A. Philip Randolph." And the letter writer says, "To add a personal note, my admiration for your works is expressed in my personal conversations, but in addition, I can no longer count the number of times and places all over the nation," go ahead and advance it, please, "in my addresses and sermons in which I have read your poems. I can think of no better way to express the beauty and the heartbeat of the struggle of our people, Martin Luther King." So Dr. King and Langston Hughes knew how often Hughes's poetry had been used by Dr. King, and it had been ongoing for a long time. So this letter is for an event that was scheduled January 24th, 1960, much like ours in Carnegie Hall, to celebrate A. Philip Randolph. Langston Hughes wrote what before my research was an unpublished and unknown poem exactly for Martin Luther King. And the next image will show the front piece of that poem. And go ahead and advance it one more time, please. This is Langston Hughes saying that he has written the poem specifically upon Dr. King's request, and it will be read at the event, and it was read by Miss Ruby Dee, who is starring in A Raisin in the Sun. Now, this is 1960, and so when Langston Hughes wrote about anything, his favorite theme was the dream. He said, "Hold fast to dreams, for hold fast to dreams." And he talked about what happens to a dream deferred. And as we've already heard so eloquently, he talked about "I dream a world." And on the next piece, we'll see that this poem, lo and behold, was about a dream being realized. And Dr. King saw this poem, and even though Eleanor Roosevelt and a number of people had committed to come, this was the thing he was most excited about. He couldn't believe that Langston Hughes, the leading figure of poetry, had written this special poem for the occasion. But this didn't mark the first time that Dr. King had experienced dreams in the poetry of Langston Hughes. In fact, what had happened is this was preceded by a sermon Dr. King gave on April 5th, 1959. At that time, he talked about shattered dreams, and he asked, "Who here has not been the victim of shattered dreams and blasted hopes?" And what Dr. King was referencing was the success of the onstage play A Raisin in the Sun that only 3 weeks before had taken on to Broadway and become particularly known for its line from Langston Hughes' work. So 1960, Dr. King's first engagements with the dream comes from Hughes' poem that he requests personally. 1959, he's talking about the dream for the second time based on Langston Hughes' poem Dream Deferred. But most noticeably, we can go all the way back to 1956. On August 11th, 1956, Dr. King ended a speech in Buffalo, New York, in a speech that people have long considered the precursor to the speech we have right here in Rocky Mount, by rewriting line for line Langston Hughes' poem, I Dream a World. And the subject matter of that speech was transformation and integration. And so Dr. King, to use a reference to Thelonious Monk, he riffed on Hughes. He took Hughes' ideas, but he made them his own, and he made them something new and beautiful in a poignant way. So to summarize briefly, Dr. King's first 3 engagements with the idea of dreams are all specifically tied to Langston Hughes' poems. After that, in 1960, Dr. King starts talking about the American dream, and he starts bringing that in for more integrated audiences as a way to connect. And then when he comes to Rocky Mount, he adds one more feature. He's got Hughes' poetry, the American dream, and now he starts connecting it to prophecy. The prophetic voice that we all recognize when Dr. King spoke on the March of Washington. References to Amos, references to Isaiah. In the verse we have here, references to Acts and references to Matthew. He realized that to bring people together, you could model integration. Poetry, the American dream, prophecy, all together in something new and beautiful to serve as a kind of rehearsal for the performance of integration our nation needed. So these tremendous things then bring us to Rocky Mount. And we would say, why is this speech in Rocky Mount so important? In addition to all the reasons you know and have known for a long time. This speech is important because Dr. King's address in November 1962 at Booker T was entitled Facing the Challenge of a New Age. And this 55-minute speech was a speech that he had been revising and changing since 1956, the first time he rewrote Hughes' I Dream a World. So right here on the border between Nash and Edgecombe counties, Langston Hughes and Dr. King intersected perfectly as Dr. King took a speech he'd been using and found one more way to revise it, because at the same time, and I love this letter writing we had here in the back, Dr. King was revising his sermon, Strength to Love, and there's actually a handwritten copy in Boston University on yellow notepad, which Dr. King writes in blue ink, "We as a people have long dreamed of freedom." And with his blue pen, 8 to 9 times, he traces over the word dreamed, dreamed. And he is fixated and focusing on continuing to share and revise this notion of a dream. So, our project is intent on telling your story and sharing it with the world. And part of that has to do with making the audio tape of Dr. King's speech available in our film. But it's become such a major component, it also is going to be available on its own. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to play the restored audio of just a small section of the speech that's available in the museum here, and that will be available shortly in both the film and on its own as a standalone segment. It has been restored as best as possible to its original levels by the leading audio archivist on the East Coast, George Blood of Philadelphia, and I am thrilled to not only have it for you here, but to be soon making it available to everyone, every teacher, every person in this community and beyond. So let's listen to the very end of Dr. King's address. You'll recognize it sounding so similar to the one he gave at the March of Washington.
Friends of Rocky Mount, I have a dream tonight. It is a dream rooted deeply in the American dream. I have a dream that one day Down in Sasser County, Georgia, where they burned 2 churches down a few days ago because Negroes wanted to register and vote. One day right down there, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little white girls and walk the streets as brothers and sisters. I have a dream that one day, right here in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will meet at the table of brotherhood, knowing that out of one blood God made all men to dwell upon the face of the earth. I have a dream that one day men all over this nation will recognize that all men were created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. I have a dream tonight. One day the words of Amos will become real. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I have a dream tonight. One day every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low. Crooked places will be made straight. The rough places will be made plain. The glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. I have a dream tonight. One day men will do unto others as they would have others to do unto them. I have a dream tonight. One day my little daughter and my 2 sons will grow up in a world not conscious of the color of their skin, but only conscious of the fact that they are members of the human race. I have a dream tonight. We will be able to sing with new meaning. My country tears of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. That must become true all over America if this is to be a great nation. Yes, let it ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let it ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let it ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let it ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let it ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. So let it ring from Stone Mountain in Georgia. Let it ring from Lookout Mountain in Tennessee. Let it ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. Let it ring from every mountain of North Carolina. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of their own Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Soon, in the tradition of Miss Hawkins, who taught history for years in this community, this speech can be retaught and accessible in classrooms right here in Rocky Mount. Elementary school children, junior high school children, high school children in their classrooms can do the things that are already taking place in Apex High School by teaching this as part of their curriculum. That touches me. Deeply moving. And the director of our film, who is going to be sharing this beyond the boundaries of North Carolina, is the best we could find. She has done films on the Greensboro sit-ins. She has done films on Generation of Change, talking about Terry Sanford and the Great Bill Friday. She has talked about the NC Fund of the Great Generation and things that have happened, and done award-winning documentaries on the life of Elizabeth Spencer. And so I have seen her animated before, but she has never been more animated than she is about this project. and telling this story in many number of ways. So, here's what we need to know. This needs to be accessible everywhere in Rocky Mount. And we want to do all we can to make that happen as soon as possible so that every generation knows of what happened here and how important it is. But as you've seen lately, this isn't just Rocky Mount's story. The entire state wants to know about this. From Asheville to the Outer Banks. What happened in Rocky Mount? You've got to be kidding. That's amazing. But it isn't just a story for our state. Everywhere from the Grand Coulee Dam to the Capitol is interested. And if you followed closely, you noticed that when we were able to make the announcement of the way we're moving forward, that stories appeared translated into Dutch, German, Italian, French, appearing on the continents of Africa and Australia and throughout the globe. The world wants to hear your story. And we want to tell it, and we want to do our best to tell it right. So, let me say this for now before we see the film clip a little bit later and continue enjoying this fantastic performance, which I am just in awe of. On behalf of so many people, those that can't even be named, but those like Will Tobert who have helped prepare this transcript so that we'll have every word right when we make it available, for those like Rebecca Cerise who have taken their time, for those who have been so helpful like Reuben Blackwell in letting us look at his center and be in the gymnasium, to so many other folks in this community like Andre Knight, and on and on and on. We are so thankful, and we are here to thank you for what's going on and happening. It is our goal that as we keep moving forward together, that this will be a story that we can share to the ends of the earth. Thank you.
Dr. Jason Miller. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller, for that wonderful presentation and for sharing the audio of that speech. We're so happy you joined us this evening. And Dr. Miller is right. The world wants to know about it. It was amazing because after the remastering of that speech, you heard about it. Did you all see this? ABC World News reported on Rocky Mount. CNN reported on Rocky Mount, WRAL. It was just amazing. Right now, I do want to welcome back our community members as they reenact the community's response to Dr. King's visit.
It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. People be telling me, don't hang around. It's been a long, long but I know change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. Change gon' come.
On November 27th, in 1962, I was asked to prepare a meal for Dr. King and Reverend Dudley because I was the only caterer and I was the only black caterer. I prepared a meal of steak and potatoes and green salad. I served Dr. King and the Reverend their meal. Now, I wasn't privy to their conversation during their meal, but I was able to take a picture with them and talk with them a bit. I thought Dr. King was a very nice, ordinary man. Now, people chastise me about calling Dr. King an ordinary man, but he was. He was kind and polite and personal. And that is what made his message so extraordinary.
Dr. Armstrong and other distinguished platform associates, ladies and gentlemen, I need not pause to say how very delighted I am to have the privilege of coming to this community and sharing with you this evening. I'm happy to be here for at least two reasons that I can think of. One is, I'm happy to see you. The other is, I'm happy to be on the ground. Dr. Armstrong was asking me about my flight from Atlanta, and I told him for some reason it was a rather turbulent and bumpy flight. And whenever the skies are acting up a bit and I'm on the airplane, I'm always happy when that plane lands at the airport. Now, I don't want anybody here to get the impression that I don't have faith in the God in the air. It's just simply I've had more experience with him on the ground.
Now, I did go see Dr. King speak at the Booker T. Washington School. And I thought all those things he was talking about would never come true. I mean, they were just so far-fetched. Black boys and girls holding hands, living and working together with white boys and girls. I just couldn't believe it could happen. But it has. The ideal of unity. Well, you know, we still have a ways to go, but you know what Dr. King dreamed of really did come true. If you ask me, Dr. King was a prophet.
All I'm saying is simply this. All life is interrelated, and all men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in the single garments of destiny. And whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And for some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. And that is the way life is made, interrelated.
He got everybody stirred up. Well, he was such a dynamic speaker. And there's one thing I always remember to take away from his message. That whatever you do, dig ditches, sing in a choir, be a teacher or a doctor, even drive a bus, be the best. Be the best at whatever you do.
We must work hard. We must realize that because of the conditions of oppression, we have been thrown behind culturally and otherwise. And that means we may have to work a little harder than other people. He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster in front of the man. This is what we are challenged to do. We must set out to do a good job, not just a good Negro job. For in this new order, we will be competing with people. In the old order, maybe it was all right to just think of competing with Negroes. And if you're setting out to be just a good Negro school teacher, or a good Negro doctor, or a good Negro lawyer, or a good Negro preacher, or a good Negro skilled laborer, or a good Negro beautician, or a good Negro barber, you have already flunked your matriculation exam for the University of Hope. A challenge comes to us to do a good job and do their job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn couldn't do it better. If it falls to your lot to be a street sweeper, street sweeps like Raphael painted pictures. Sweep streets like Michelangelo carved marble. Street sweeps like Beethoven composed music, and like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts in heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lives a great sweeper who swept his job well.
So I worked hard. I worked hard at being a mother. I worked hard at being a caterer. I worked hard at being the cook, the best councilwoman. And I was the first black female city councilman of Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
The next morning, Dr. King was front page in the news. The paper chose to focus on his message of peace. Wednesday afternoon, November 28, 1962, the Evening Telegram said, King presents case for non-violence.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. presented his case for nonviolence and seeking integration to an enthusiastic crowd of more than 1,800 Negroes here last night. The president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference urged Eastern North Carolina Negroes assembled in the Booker T. Washington High School Gymnasium to continue efforts to register and vote in large numbers and gain meaningful civil rights legislation, to work through the courts, and to engage in nonviolent direct actions as individuals.
He said the Negro would wear down Southern whites through his capacity to suffer, and added the Negro would win whites over in the process. Dr. King, who was invited to speak by the Rocky Mount Voters and Improvement League, said, the nation is on the border of the promised land of integration. Old man segregation is on his deathbed, Dr. King said. The only thing now is how costly the South will make his funeral.
Mayor William B. Harrison, whose time was split between two meetings, was at the meeting long enough to welcome Dr. King to Rocky Mount. He called on Negroes to continue the city's strife-free record in racial affairs. He said, our two races have lived, worked, and progressed together in an atmosphere of mutual understanding and respect. This has not been by accident nor because of the Supreme Court decision, but as a result of long-term efforts on the part of city leaders of both races in trying to anticipate and fulfill the needs of all of our people.
In these troubled times, when other cities and other places have been torn with strife, violence, and hatred, I hope we in Rocky Mount may be able to continue our progressive course without force, violence, threats, sit-ins, picketing, or boycotting, but understanding, goodwill, faith, and sincerity in the true spirit of Christian brotherhood. Dr. King said after the meeting that there was no specific purpose in his visit to Eastern North Carolina other than in response to an invitation from the Voters and Improvement League. Dr. King's message to the gathering was wrapped in an aura of biblical passages in poems and works from philosophers. A united choir guild of 100 voices entertained musical selections. The 55-minute speech ended with thunderous standing ovation.
So my friends of Rocky Mount, I have a dream tonight. It is a dream rooted deeply in the American dream. I have a dream that one day down in Sasser County, Georgia, where they burned down 2 churches a few days ago because Negroes wanted to register and vote. One day, right down there, little black boys and little black girls will join hands with little white boys and little white girls and walk the streets as brothers and sisters.
I have a dream that one day, right here in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, that sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will meet at the table of brotherhood, knowing that out of one blood, God made all men dwell upon the face of the earth.
I have a dream that one day men all over this nation will recognize that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.
I have a dream tonight. One day the words of Amos will be real. Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream.
I have a dream tonight that every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and every mountain shall be made low. Every crooked place shall be made straight, and every rough place shall be made straight. The glory of the Lord shall appear, and all in flesh shall see it together.
I have a dream tonight that one day men would do unto others as they would have others do unto them.
I have a dream tonight. One day my little daughter and my 2 sons will grow up in a world not conscious of the color of their skin, but only conscious of the fact that they are members of the human race.
I have a dream tonight that someday we will be free. We will be free. We will be standing here. We will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sang, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim pride. American mountainside, let freedom ring.
That must become true all over America. If this is to be a great nation, yes, let it ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire.
Let it ring from the mighty mountains of New York.
Let it ring from the heightened Alleghanies of Pennsylvania.
Let it ring from the curvaceous slopes of Colorado.
But not just that. Let it ring from every mountainside. Let freedom ring.
So let it ring from Stone Mountain in Georgia. Let it ring from Lookout Mountain in Tennessee. Let it ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. Let it ring from every mountain in North Carolina. From every mountainside, let it ring. And when this has happened, all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty. We are free at last.
Free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Cerise. I'm the director of the documentary Origin Dream. How about another hand for that amazing performance? Ooh. I'm so unbelievably moved by it and to be part of this wonderful, wonderful evening. I'm a historical documentarian because I believe history matters, and I think we can see from this amazing presentation that exactly why, right? So Origin of the Dream is an amazing scholarly book that Jason Miller wrote. He approached me a little over a year ago and said, listen, I think this would make an amazing documentary. No one knows about these connections between Langston Hughes and Martin Luther King. As Jason said, I think I've been doing films about the civil rights movement, about racism, segregation, economic racism, educational racism, and I think the civil rights movement is one of the most exciting and incredible parts of American history. So I could not have been more excited when he approached me about this. So we have a little excerpt to show you. It features Rocky Mount very heavily, including an amazing interview we did with someone who's in the audience, Herbert Tillman, about he was actually at the speech, and we actually got to go to the Booker T. Washington Gymnasium and have him tell us about it. It was a really powerful experience for me and Jason, I know, and I think Herbert as well. So very excited to show it to you. You'll see sort of what we have in mind, very similar to the presentation that you all did. We want to do some dramatic readings of Langston Hughes poetry. We want to use animation. We have a lot of great ideas for a cutting-edge historical documentary that they'll make it accessible to multiple generations of people. And you know, sadly, the things that Langston Hughes was writing about from the 20s on, and the things that Dr. King fought for his entire life, are still plaguing us today, and in some ways are worse than they were with you know, all the police killings. And the horrible things going on, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, you know, Michael Brown, and as you see, we have some of that in this too, because we want to make the connection to today. And this is why what King and Hughes talked about, and the dream that they're talking about that is in the American dream, that sadly is not a reality for too many people. And we need to bring that to people's attention and work towards making our country a better place for everybody. So I hope you enjoy the 6-minute excerpt. I'll come back up here just for a few minutes afterwards just to say a couple more things. Thank you so much.
It is a great pleasure to be in this section of the state of North Carolina. I've been in this state many, many times.
So then the big news came. Martin Luther King was coming to Booker T. Washington High School.
I can remember coming in and everything was just filled with people everywhere. And I could just see the anticipation on the people's faces, where everybody was just excited, and they had photographers. They were snapping pictures, and people was everywhere. And all of a sudden, Martin Luther King comes on stage, and everybody, I mean everybody, got to their feet and started hollering in jubilation with excitement.
The speech itself to me was amazing, because I'd never heard anybody put all those kind of words together and let them flow like liquid. And he was crystal clear. And he was saying that we can walk together.
All I'm saying is simply this: all life is interrelated, and all the men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one.
His message was, I want to bring all people together. Black, white, green, purple, polka dot, don't care who you are. No more white and colored water fountain. No more you can't go here and you can't go there. But everybody, no matter where you're from, could just come together and be a part of this United States of America, where we can all come and share in the same dream, regardless of race, creed, or color, as he used to say.
I do think he practiced on us for his I Have a Dream speech.
What do you mean by that?
that means that I heard a lot of I have a dream, and one day such and such, in his speech that night, that was kind of like my lips stopped moving when he was at the Washington in his speech, because I said, hey, I heard that in Rocky Mountain.
So my friends of Rocky Mountain, I have a dream tonight. It is a dream rooted deeply in the American dream. I have a dream that one day
King gave us a focus with that I have a dream speech. Because many of us dream. We were dreamers because we had to dream past the reality that we were in as African American folk in America. We had to dream past the reality of Jim Crow. And we knew that at some time, that dream would be deferred. Sometimes that dream would turn to chaos.
What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run?
It all started with the fatal shooting by police of an unarmed black
Does it
teenager.
stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?
I have often wondered about the connection between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, probably his most iconic speech, probably his most often quoted speech. I wondered about that and some of the works and words of Langston Hughes. Certainly one of the prevailing themes in the poetry of Langston Hughes is the dream.
A lot of people recognize that Martin Luther King's dream has its roots in kind of the American dream, and that's critically important to look at. We also know it has kind of this prophetic tradition, but there's this element of poetry that's also missing as well, and that comes directly from a number of Langston Hughes poems. And exploring that in poems like Dream Deferred and I Dream a World are really important new ways of looking into the connections between the two.
I always thought that Martin was an English literature major because he had the capacity to quote poetry from Shakespeare, from James Weldon Johnson, from Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes, I think, was very much the people's poet. He was the kind of person who wrote poetry that anybody could read, anybody could recite, and everybody could love, because it was so simple. And I don't mean simple-minded by any means, but it's so simple, so ordinary, complex and tricky, but ordinary, at least to me.
You cannot leave Booker T. Washington Senior High School without knowing about Langston Hughes and the legacy that means for you. Because life for many of us hadn't been no crystal stair. It had tacks in it and places bare and boards torn up. But yet and still, we survived.
There's something in our heritage, in our cultural DNA, that gives us a capacity for the poetic.
Hughes wrote about this poem where he said, I dream a world where black or white, wherever race you be, will share in the bounties of the earth and every man is free. And if we go way back to these 56 speeches, we can see King envisioning a new world. And by the time he revises this speech in 1962, he's dreaming. And so you can really see at the foundation is King was literally dreaming of a new world, just as Langston Hughes had done in his own poetry.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It was amazing to put together that excerpt. It's such an important story, and Rocky Mount is such a big part of it. We really, really want to bring this story, like Jason said, not just to Rocky Mount, not just to North Carolina, not even just to the people in the United States, but to everyone. Obviously, there's a lot of interest about this. So right now, we're looking for partners. We're looking for investors. We have brochures that have more information about it. We have a fiscal sponsor called the Southern Documentary Fund, and all contributions are tax deductible. Hate to ask the money thing, sorry, but it's part of making a film if you want to do something wonderful and get it out there. We're happy to give you more information about it, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. And after seeing that portion of the documentary. I'm really excited to see it in its completed form in 2017. That was very exciting. Give them another round of applause, please. And don't forget that it is on display alongside the exhibit Color in Freedom, Journey Along the Underground Railroad in our Arts Center, okay? And do me a favor and tell your friends about it, tell your colleagues, bring your family, your children to see that as well, okay? It's very important. Right now, I do want to welcome to the stage our Rocky Mount City Council member and NAACP president. Give it up for Mr. Andre Knight. And right after him, we'll have closing remarks from City Manager Charles Penny.
I'd like to say good evening to everyone. This event has been very moving to me and hopefully to all of us tonight. I am Andre Knight, City Councilman, Ward 1, and the president of the Rocky Mount branch of the NAACP. First of all, I just want to say that our city has tons of history, rich history, that we should be proud of. And we can say that's why we love Rocky Mount. And I just want to say to two of my mentors, Mr. Dempsey Cotton, we name him our historian. He's 96. He just celebrated his birthday. And also Miss Helen Gay, who in her honor, we named the historic train station after her and the works that she have done in the city of Rocky Mount. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank Dr. Miller and all of you all who made this night possible and a success tonight. I just want to say that two of the photos that you saw a few minutes ago came from the collection of J.B. Heron. He was a journalist, a photographer, and a historian. He wrote for the NAACP, for the local, the state, and the national. And Mr. Heron also wrote for the Carolinian. And when I was told that I could give brief remarks, I just want to lift something that he wrote shortly after Dr. King left. He said, "Negroes must vote or suffer. Rocky Mount, those of the colored race who have ears to hear what the forces of Beverly Lake have been saying during the past few months, and can read and understand what his platform means to the Negro aspiration for full equality and integration of all public facility, had better start running to the nearest registration place and get their names on the voting roll so as to offset the votes of those who forever keep you or keep us enslaved." J.B. Heron was fearless, and he wrote the truth. He brought power to this community. Dempsey Cotton told me that Reverend Dudley wrote Dr. King, as we saw, but he was a personal friend of Dr. King's father. And Dr. King's father had come to Rocky Mount numerous of times and preached at the Mount Zion First Baptist Church. And one particular Sunday that he spoke, after the service, there was a Klan that was standing there to greet him. They thought it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but it was his father. That was the kind of connection that Reverend Dudley had with the King family. Even after his visit, the city of Rocky Mount, the mayor wrote during that time and formed a committee, the Mayor's Good Neighbors Committee, the city of Rocky Mount, a blueprint for progress. And it's that throughout the history of Rocky Mount, the city of Rocky Mount, the Negroes and the white race have lived and worked together in peace and harmony. In such an atmosphere of goodwill, we have grown to prosper. Then it states that the members of the biracial committee were included in the membership of the new committee. And the purpose of the new committee, as stated by the mayor, as follows: to promote peaceful relations between races, to work to correct overt injustices whenever and wherever it is prudently possible. to exert its full power to prevent racial trouble in Rocky Mount, especially the use of forces, the violence by any group, at any time, for any purpose. During that time, the progressive whites and blacks worked together to make this city the best city that it could be. We know what our troubles are now and what our concerns are now. I will not mention those. But he asked us to answer the clarion call that we work together to move this city forward. It is not by a mistake or circumstance that tonight this event took place. It was ordained by God in 1962, and it was ordained by God and the Holy Spirit that Dr. Miller would come to Rocky Mount and to put this program together. So let us continue the dream, not just dream, but get up and do something to make our city a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Knight. I'm Charles Penny, City Manager of Rocky Mount. I know you've been sitting for a long time, so I won't stand before you very long. But I do want to echo what Councilmember Knight said and thank Dr. Miller and the director, I think Dr. Solis, for the documentary. Dr. Miller, I want to say to you, probably about 10 years ago, at the Martin Luther King breakfast, our late mayor, Fred Turnage, was living at the time, and we found that tape, and we were listening to that tape before the MLK celebration. But it was hard to hear. So as we went into the Dunn Center, we had to listen very hard. But you could hear the refrain of Dr. King saying, "I have a dream." So Rocky Mount wants to thank you and the technicians for improving the quality of the tape so we can now hear that. And so Archie, on MLK celebration, we play that tape before we start our program so that everyone can hear that. But I would also say it is important, the fact that Dr. King spoke in Rocky Mount in 1962, historic. It is something to be proud of, not just African Americans, but everybody in our city. And this year, my charge to Rocky Mount and to all of our citizens is when we go to the Dunn Center to celebrate MLK, there should not be one empty seat in the Dunn Center. We are at such a high point because of this fantastic program. But as I was thinking about tonight and the final words that I would say, I just reflected for a moment about where I was on April 4th, 1968. It was a Friday night in my hometown of Fayetteville when the news came on about the death of Dr. King. I was 11 years old at the time. And I would say to you, it's very frightening because I didn't know what the future held for us. But I would also say that little man, Dr. King, with that booming voice, little did we know the prophecy that he laid before us. Little did I know when I was 11 years old that God would ordain that I would be here in Rocky Mount. So I thank Dr. King for the history, and I thank Rocky Mount for its place in history. Dr. Miller, I thank you for helping the nation to recognize all the good things that can come out of Rocky Mount. In the Bible, it says, is there anything good that can come out of Nazareth? Is there anything good that can come out of Rocky Mount? There's a lot of good stuff that comes out of Rocky Mount. And if you don't have a proud bone in your body tonight, you have a reason to be proud of Rocky Mount. So tonight, I want to thank you for being here. And I want to invite you at the conclusion of the program, because we're there. Dr. Miller's going to be out signing his book. We also want to invite you to go to the art gallery to enjoy the art. And I went up earlier today just to get a sneak peek. There's no cost, so there's no reason that anyone should not enjoy that art. It's going to be here for a while. We want you to enjoy it. And so the last thing I want to do, I want the performers to come out and And before they do this, they had 3 days to put this program together for you. Take a bow, rise to your feet. Let's celebrate this great group.